Rossi with the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Another edition of The Wave. Glad you're with us. Another one of my favorite things to do is to interview the mayors of our 7 great Hampton cities in South Side and on the peninsula here, because I love every one of the cities. All the mayors are great. Today is no exception with Mayor Tuck from Hampton, Virginia, one of our great 7. Mayor Tuck, welcome to the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
It's going to be a nice few minutes here, even though we're in an environment that's not so nice. First of all, congratulations. You just got elected to a second. You and Mayor Rick West. He just got elected. He was bragging on that when I interviewed him. What was that like?
Well, let me share with you, and maybe you recall, maybe you don't, but you were probably the first person who interviewed me when I was running for council back in 2010. At that time, I unsuccessfully run on 2 occasions. And so following your interview, I got elected for the first time to Hampton City Council. And after 6 years as a councilman, I ran for mayor and won 2016. And as you said, won re-election in this past May. So it's been a great 10 years. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I think we have a great city, and we're poised for greatness.
Maybe I had the magic touch. That's what I was on the radio show, like the Platter said. He's got that magic touch.
Well, I think you're still the happiest man in America.
That I am, certainly, because I live in such a great region. Mayor Tuck, your background from Old Dominion and Duke University. You've been there in Hampton for a good while. Working for the city. You actually did some things with the Washington Federals in PR. I actually worked in PR for them in the Washington Federals of the United States Football League.
Well, you're calling the United States Football League. I actually worked for the Washington football team.
I'm glad you're glad. You're glad you weren't up there during the last couple of years and all this foolishness.
I got my ring and ran.
Who was coach then? Coach Gibbs?
Yes, he was. And in fact, that was the year. It was a very, very strange year. We may have talked about it, but that was the year they had this strike that lasted about 4 or 5 weeks. So they played one game, they stopped, and they resumed after 3 more weeks. And that was the team that won the Super Bowl with Doug Williams as quarterback, 1987.
He was a good one. He was MVP that year too, I believe.
Of the Super Bowl, yes. And at that time, we had a quarter like no other. We scored 35 points in one quarter to come back against Denver. I think we were down 10-0, and came back and outscored them 35-10, and finally won this game 42-10. I
had the other team. I fell asleep thinking I had money in the bank. Hey, let's get into the tough things going on with COVID. This chamber, the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce, again with Mayor Tuck from Hampton, Virginia, folks. Small businesses are a big thing that we try to support. What's City of Hampton doing to support those small businesses? What's the impact then?
Early on, we recognized that many of our small businesses were struggling. So what the council did back in April was that we came up with a package. I think it was $500,000 for Hampton-based businesses with 25 employees or less. And I think there was an annual, a resource criteria. They could have made more than, maybe it was $2 million. I can't remember what the amount was. But anyway, we did that to aid small businesses that had applied for PPP under the CARES Act. And we were able to help, I think it might have been about 50 businesses or so. They were eligible up to $10,000. So that was a help. Beyond that, we have not come back with another program. But of course, the governor came to Hampton to announce a $70 million program back in, I think it was around the early part of August. And that was to help businesses across the state. So we know that there are some who've been tremendously impacted, and we're just trying our best, I think all of us, to keep above water, keep our heads above water. we also, for some of our restaurants, when they had the restrictions on the number of people who could be allowed inside, in fact, I think they only do takeout at the time. We blocked off Queensway downtown, and we were preparing to block off Mellon Street in Phoebus so that there could be outdoor dining. The folks in downtown Queensway really enjoy it, and so we're trying to look at how we might be able to extend that throughout the year. But beyond that, those were small things we could do to help. Again, we didn't have a lot of money. We actually lost a lot of revenue. We lost about $5 million in revenue in that last quarter, but some of that's been made up by the CARES Act funding that we received. But it's been tough.
That piggybacks right onto my next question. That I've asked these very similar questions to Bobby Dyer, Rick West, Church, and Suffolk. The budgets are going to be very tough for everybody. How are you going to make ends meet? Because I guess it's the state law, you have to balance your budget. So what, raise taxes, cut fees, raise fees, cut?
Well, one of the things we don't want to do is do that in the middle, and of course we're still near the end of the fiscal year, but we don't want to raise fees and taxes. I think to do that after you've adopted your budget is not very, very wise. So one of the things we've done is we've frozen spending on any new capital project or any either operational spending that was not budgeted. We have what's called a pre-COVID budget, and the idea was that we have projected that if revenues come in the way we projected them at the beginning when we were doing the budget, then we'll have one amount that'll be spent, and that'll be the balanced budget that we adopted in July. But if things don't work out, then again, we will freeze a lot of spending. One of the things we were able to do that some other localities did not do is that we did not furlough any of our workers. We kept them employed through the course of last March when this thing more or less started, and they've been, we have not laid anyone off or terminated, not furloughed any workers.
How could you afford to do that?
Well, again, we were actually targeted above some of the revenues that we projected in that last quarter. And so we just made a conscious decision that we wouldn't spend anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And we weren't going to raise fees. Now, we've lost, I mean, we're no different than the other cities in our region that we depend on meals taxes, we depend on admission taxes, amusement taxes to make a good portion of our budget. And so we lost the Jazz Festival, we lost all the planning that we had for the Coliseum, as well as a number of conferences and conventions that were coming to our convention center. We also lost the events that Boo Williams brings in with his basketball tournaments and things like that. So a lot of revenue lost because you couldn't have a gathering of more than 1,000 people with social distancing, and it just was not going to work. So again, we just tighten our belts and are just trying to do the best we can right now. Again, some of the CARES Act revenue will help. We found out it was coming. I don't think we received all of it, but we knew that was coming, and so that's helped us bridge a gap. We've got to make sure we spend that money by December 31st. That's not money can be carried over. And so what that allows us to do is to maybe do some shifting of revenue that we had. But that's pretty much it. I think like everybody else, we're tightening our belts and hoping for the best.
You can hope with that money that comes in, you can reallocate it accordingly to where your needs.
Yes.
By the way, there at the Hampton Coliseum, I'm sure you like me, I've seen a lot of good shows, the Hampton Jazz Festival, Ella Fitzgerald, Garth Brooks. But you got those drive-in movies going on now, man. You been there?
Not yet, but my understanding, they have really, really been successful, and it's just finding creative ways of doing things. And speaking of the Coliseum, this is the 50th anniversary of the Coliseum. And some of the comments you just made, some of the acts you saw are in the proclamation that I drafted earlier this week. So it's just amazing that building it was like the first of its kind, I believe, in the state of Virginia. And
it's big and beautiful, and it's like we've had a lot of enjoyment there. You've got a lot of strong things going on in Hampton with the aerospace, the Air Force out there, Langley, medical health care. some powerhouses. Obviously, Hampton Coliseum with that Proton Therapy, Bill Thomas over there and the president. So a lot of those things are strengths, I'm assuming, for Hampton.
They are, and in fact, we have another project that we can't announce until next week that we've been sitting on for 3 months, and that's going to be.
You got it under your hat? You got it.
Well, it's unfortunate, but we could not announce it. And if you think about it, you go back about 3 months or so when we were sitting on it, first began to sit on it. That was an election season. I mean, that's one of the things that you count upon to say, hey, this is my ace up my sleeve, my whole card, that if I put that out there, hey, that's going to swing a lot of votes my way. Well, I was fortunate, but we'll be able to announce it next week. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at the announcement that's going to be made.
That Proton Therapy thing, that's the real deal. It's Bill Thomas and I talked a lot about that because our first event was over there with Clay Jenkinson, the Thomas Jefferson guy, and we had a very successful event. But that's really saved a lot of people, and seems to be the real deal. A lot of money in it.
Well, and it's unfortunate because in our region, we have the highest incidence of prostate cancer in the Commonwealth, the highest in this area. And there's the highest mortality rate in Portsmouth. And yet, individuals who have prostate cancer and other kinds of cancers are not referred to the Proton Therapy Institute. And I've talked to people at Hampton University, and they're very upset about that. And they're trying to work with different agencies, different federal agencies, to try and get more people who are referred there. Some insurance companies still look at that as being a trial type of treatment, and they don't really respect it. However, at the time that Hampton University built it, I think there might have been 11 in the country, and theirs is the largest freestanding proton therapy institute in the world. Now, more of your colleges and universities, i.e., your Johns Hopkins, I think even the University of Virginia, are building proton therapy treatment centers. And so the question now becomes, well, can you still regard it as experimental? But how do you regard it as experimental when you have a Johns Hopkins, which is known, nationally as being the center of excellence as far as medical treatment and care?
Bill Thomas would punch you if you said it was experimental.
Well, no, but he fully understands that. We have conversations all the time as to why they're not getting patients, not getting referrals. So it is, I guess, it is still one of those things that still ahead of its time, but it's not well received, and that's the unfortunate aspect of it. The patients they treat there have successful care, and they have treated their cancers, and their testimonials that we get locally about what they do there, but it's not as widespread, and they're not treating the numbers that they expected when they opened it.
Well, hopefully that'll change again. Mayor Donnie Tuck, folks, here on your Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, JP Gotzi. A few minutes we have left here. Still a lot of things going on there in Hampton. The Chamberlain, now that's the retirement community. I got married there. I mean, that place is just awesome. Is that doing as well as they'd hoped right there on Fort Monroe?
Well, it's privately owned, and we really have not had conversations, or I'll say I have not had conversations with the owners. I've been there on a couple of occasions, and I would tell you, you have one of the great vistas probably in this region. When you think about being up on the, I think like the 10th floor, and looking out over the Chesapeake Bay, and watching sometimes the ships go by and things like that, it's just beautiful there. In fact, it's beautiful on Fort Monroe, period.
The things that you have so much, as I said, going on there, I was very disappointed. One of the things that was canceled was that Hampton Pirate Festival that you have every year. And what's the other one? The Hampton Bay Days?
Well, the Bay Days we felt ran its course several years ago, and so what we've tried to do is have more of those types of outdoor events at lower cost. And we've also taken some of the dollars that went to support that and have encouraged local community organizations to have different events. And so we're finding that we're having more of those things.
And wrapping some things up here, obviously, as I said, you don't have to run for office now, but I know you're very passionate about a couple things that I wanted you to let our viewers hear. Mm-hmm. My most passionate thing to me is term limits. I ask every single elected official. I asked you on my radio show back in 2010 about them. I don't remember what your answer is. I personally wouldn't vote for my mother if she was up there more than 12 years. What's your feelings on term limits?
Well, I'm term limiting myself. This is my last election, and I think it's time for somebody else. I think that, and in fact, stop that.
Oh no, I love you. I love you, Mayor Tuck, but I just does that.
but no, I think there are opportunities. I think there are a lot of people who want to serve.
Right.
And I think that if I have not accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in the time as a council member and even now as mayor, and I think, again, there are a lot of great things are happening. And I more or less want to see those through, but I also recognize some of those will actually develop and maybe come to fruition after I'm gone. There's no point in staying there just for the sake of staying. I had a conversation. I was on an interview with the mayor of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's about 32 years old. In fact, I think he said he's been mayor for like 16. That can't be right, but maybe he's a little older than that. But he's been mayor like, I think, 16 years, or 12 or 16. And I'm saying, you were born mayor, weren't you? Well, he's from Tuscaloosa. And again, I mean, at some point you got to feel like I need to step aside and let somebody else.
Right.
And that's my attitude.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Let other people serve because they want the opportunity, and we all know it's very difficult to get an incumbent out of office once they get in there. Yes. What's on your heart in the couple minutes that we have left, Mayor Donnie Tuck from Hampton? What's the passion or the things that you want to see in the next 3.5 years?
One is to reduce some of the gun violence. Not some, reduce the gun violence in our community. I think that with COVID, every community is experiencing gun violence that had not previously had those numbers. I look at what's happening in Virginia Beach, but we are having the same things, and it's craziness. It makes no sense. That's one. We have older neighborhoods that have been overlooked, and I want to try and make sure that we bring them some of the resources with respect to infrastructure. I can't put sidewalks in every area, but we can enhance those neighborhoods with lighting and maybe try and do something for the open ditches that create problems for them. And I think beyond that is just try and make sure that our existing businesses continue to be able to grow and expand. I want them to thrive.
By the way, Mayor Tuck, the elephant in the room, so to speak, we had one bad incident down here at the beach. Portsmouth obviously has just had their share of problems there. Have you had many I mean, I'm not talking about the peaceful protests. You know, I'm talking about the riots.
We had one, and it really was unnerving because prior to that incident occurring, which was a march at 7:57 that evening, I started the first of a series of Facebook Live town hall type formats, but it wasn't really town hall. But in the very first one, we had the chief of police, we had an assistant chief of police who's African American, we had a Commonwealth attorney who's African American, we had the another person who leads an office within our city, which is the Citizens Unity Commission, she's the executive director. And so the idea was we wanted to talk about policing in our city and how our city was different than probably most other cities. The last police-involved shooting we've had in Hampton was about 7 years ago, And our Commonwealth attorney said that that was justified. So following that 1.5-hour presentation, I went up to where the march was and stood there for a while and then eventually left. And after that, there were apparently two groups. One knelt with the police and left. Another group that had been blocking the interstate came back over into the Peninsula Town Center, and then just things went crazy. And they rioted and looted. And that was disturbing because, again, the purpose of what I was trying to do was to say, look, Hampton's not like these other areas. Yeah, we understand protests and all like that, but what you're trying to ascribe to Hampton just doesn't fit the mold. And we can talk about things. And I think I've been hurt by the fact that there have been the marches and demonstrations, and yet no one's come to talk to me with a specific request about something that needs to be changed. It's just been marching to march. And of course, we had that incident. And again, there are always people who are antagonists who infiltrate these different protests, marches, and whatever. And I think it's bizarre what's going on, particularly in Portland. 100+ days of, well, what are you asking for? Oh, we're not asking for anything. We just want to tear up the place. And that's crazy.
Well, when I read about that, I thought about you, and I knew that we'd be having you on sometime before too long. I think I've taken enough of your time. By the way, I want to say thanks to your assistant, Joy.
Yes.
What a sweetheart she was. She helped set this whole thing up in just a few days. Or Ron Villanueva, he's our executive director of the chamber, and Gary Byler, he's our chairman, attorney there in Virginia Beach. You that are listening in Hampton or wherever in Southampton Roads and the Peninsula, we want you to be a member of our team. We got a lot of good things going on here, and the information as well as this interview with Mayor Tuck will be on our website. That's coastalvachamber.com. Mayor Tuck, I'm going to get over. We're going to have some chicken wings together there before too long. How's that sound?
I'm looking forward to it, Gus.
It's been too long. It's been too long, my man.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Mayor Tuck. I'm your host, JP Gus Godsey. We'll see you next time on The Wave.